now, because it is now officially Middays with Gerard Gibert. Gerard calling in from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He's one step away from being an official Newsmax correspondent. How you doing this morning, man?
Dave, Rhino, doing great. Love the bumper music and the intro there. Doing fantastic. You could probably tell and maybe hear a little wind noise. I am outside. I just exited the media area in Fiserv Forum to do a little stint on Newsmax, and I tried to get back in. I exited, tried to get back in where they were letting folks in, kind of a side entrance, and would not allow me. Only media allowed, and they told me it's because they're casing the floor at this point. This is kind of the normal time of day they do that, so the doors for the delegates and guests do not open until 4:30, the main doors into the arena. So I'm actually out on the street here between the forum and my hotel calling in.
Well, that's okay. While you were, practicing your street walking, let's talk about what happened last night, because it was, I realized the first night we had the announcement of J.D. Vance and everything else, and it was a big night, and Trump came out. Last night, just really kind of seemed to bump it up a notch, it felt like.
Yeah, the speaking and the speakers were fantastic. It is my understanding that former President Trump had a hand in selecting at least the categories of the speakers, if you will, in particular the everyday people category. That was so dang powerful, Dave. Everybody in the place was moved by it. It was clear. The mother who lost her 15-year-old to fentanyl, and then the mother who lost her son, member of the police force in New York, she blasted the Democrats' woke policies where, as I say on the show sometimes, we have decriminalized crime and vilified the victims. And she said the Democrat Party had betrayed her and her people. She, an African-American lady, and also said that they had abandoned her. Really blasted DA Alvin Bragg in New York because they don't seem to have any interest in going after true, legitimate criminals up there. So very powerful. Both of those speakers were emotional time, and I really think they likely, in my view, will have a greater influence on undecided voters, perhaps, or maybe even voters that have decided to vote for Biden. I think those individuals will have a greater influence on how they cast their ballot than perhaps any of, the political speakers.
I think you're probably right. Having said that, I think a close second would be Baby Dog.
Yeah, absolutely.
Baby Dog should bring in the votes, I would think.
Yeah, I just think that people identify with folks who have experienced those sorts of hardships, and that's beyond hardship. I mean, that's massive tragedy. No one should ever have to lose their child, bury their child, and both of these mothers did, and told very pointed stories about that. And I think the message is blood is on the hands of the Biden administration and the president himself. I think that was the underlying message, so I thought that was excellent. I also was seated, as we talked about yesterday, not too far from the VIP box where the president and his running mate were seated. And I turned around just to look at his face, and you could tell he was moved as well by their speeches and by their remarks. Of course, the mother of the 15-year-old got emotional and began tearing up. And of course she would, talking about her deceased son in that situation. But both of them called out Joe Biden. My understanding is today, Dave, that MSNBC is making a bit of a mockery of that, ridiculing, what do you mean bringing out these everyday people, which I think further illustrates that the Democrat Party seems to be more aligned with the well-off and the elites in this country, and the Republicans are the voice of the common person.
Well, I think it has been clear for a while, and you're right, they're really cementing it this week, that if anything, the Democratic Party and the liberals look at best, look at the common person as a nuisance, if not an outright enemy.
The vote. That's what they look at. Just let me tell you, whatever I need to, whatever you'll buy so that you'll go vote for me and keep me in office and I can enjoy the spoils and the trappings of that power.
No, it's exactly right. Now, last night we had Nikki Haley, who gave her speech, and she didn't bury the lead. She led with the thing everybody was waiting to hear from her, I think.
Yes, she did. Another powerful speech. I mean, she, of course, was constantly attacking Mr. Trump on the campaign trail, but that's what you do. But often they kind of just fade away into oblivion after a primary, but was really proud to see her on the stage and endorse President Trump. And she said, look, we don't agree a lot. You may not agree with political candidates, and Lord knows I and Mr. Trump have had our differences, but we agree a lot, and we need to put him back in the White House for the good of the country. So, of course, the theme last night was safety. The night before was about the economy. Tonight it's about strength. Man, I'm so proud of the fact that the Republicans truly do have a three-pronged, well-articulated, established, unified strategy. Meanwhile, it's clear the Democrats are in disarray. I mean, just total chaos.
Well, and it keeps getting worse. I'm sure it's been discussed up there amongst all the attendees, but, you know, Biden has been making his own personal appearances and speeches this week, and they have all gone exactly like you would expect them to go. Now the revolt is starting to build back up on Capitol Hill to replace him as the candidate. So if anything, they're even devolving more into chaos than they were before the Republican National Convention. And I'm going to say something that might upset some people, but I don't care. It does your heart good to watch them just fall apart.
Well, you know, let's be honest, Dave. We've been there before as conservatives and Republicans. It is so refreshing to see, and many of the delegates are talking about that, by the way, that in the past we've had this fracture in our party, but I don't see it. Everybody is 100% aligned behind the agenda, behind the platform, and, of course, behind the ticket of Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. In the meantime, I think the Democrats are trying to figure out who's going to be their candidate. You may have seen just before we came on the air here that Adam Schiff has now announced and that he believes that Mr. Biden should step down, that he cannot beat Donald Trump. Maybe he's watching the convention.
Well, yeah, and he came right out and said that in an interview and said, if Biden is the nominee in November, we lose.
Okay, there you go.
He didn't dance around it at all.
Wouldn't have expected that from him.
No,
I really wouldn't have.
He's the last person you would expect to hear that from, but I think that it illustrates perfectly just how deep the divide is right now in the Democratic Party and just how little cohesion they have, and that's not the way you win.
No, and let's be honest, the way in which Mr. Biden became their nominee in 20 was specious at best. And then, of course, he selects what I think most clear-eyed people believe was just a diversity hire in Kamala Harris. That's got them all nervous about that. And I still believe that it's DEI that was the cause of the breakdown that allowed this 20-year-old to take a shot attempting to assassinate the former president. You've probably seen more news on that today, just more evidence of just total incompetence among the Secret Service. It's just concerning. And, you know, you can't blame the rank-and-file good men and women that work for the Secret Service. This goes all the way to the top. Miss Cheadle, who runs that organization, she should be terminated immediately.
Yes, and we just got through talking about that and trying to connect some of the dots and all of this big conversation. We have gotten... Basically, she has lied, and we know it, because she has said this week, since the shooting on Saturday, she has said that it was a conscious decision to not have anyone stationed on that roof in terms of law enforcement or snipers because the slope of the roof made it too dangerous. Now she's saying, well, there was somebody assigned to be on that roof, but they didn't show up that day. It can't be both.
My God.
It can't be both, Gerard. One of them's a lie.
That's so ridiculous. But that's par for the course. I think we're almost desensitized to the lying we get out of this administration, always spinning and covering up. Nobody ever is responsible for anything. There's never any acknowledgement of failure on their part, pointing fingers.
We're headed into the break. I would ask you if you have time to stick around, but you're leaning against a lamppost. So we'll be back with Gerard Gibert right after this on Middays. SuperTalk Mississippi, Dave Hughes on the phone with us live from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Gerard Gibert, I would assume, and correct me if I'm wrong, I would assume you're probably having the time of your life up there.
It's been an absolute blast, Dave. It really has. I've met so many great people. Of course, our delegation, Mississippi, is so well represented. It is an honor to be part of it. It's just been historic. Never thought I'd be within 30, 40 feet of President Trump, J.D. Vance, Speaker Mike Johnson. This morning when I traveled through the media area in the Fiserv Arena, you can't imagine all the folks that we're used to seeing on TV all the time, both journalists and guests, many of which, of course, come from the U.S. Congress and the senators, representatives. Just really so cool. It's been a blast. And it's just, like I said, it is historic. I've enjoyed the speeches. I particularly enjoyed Vivek Ramaswamy's speech. I started talking about him on the show even before he entered the campaign, and just had tremendous respect for him and his communication skills, his understanding of the issues and how to address the critical challenges in our country. He did not disappoint last night. He just talked to the average person. He said what people want is safe neighborhoods and clean streets and good jobs. That pretty much sums it up. And that's the message coming from the Republicans this week that I think resonates with the average American.
Well, exactly. And I think that's the reason why it seemed to me anyway, from, watching here in Mississippi, that Ramaswamy got probably one of the warmest responses from the crowd out of anybody.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I will acknowledge that when Nikki Haley walked onto the stage, you could detect a mixture of cheers and boos. And, in fact, that was reported in many of the media outlets. It wasn't too terribly pronounced, but you could distinguish the sound in the arena when she trotted out on the stage versus when Vivek did, or Rubio, or even Ron DeSantis. I thought that was Ron DeSantis' best speech I've ever seen. If he would have delivered speeches like that on the campaign trail, he may have had a better chance of becoming our nominee.
Well, and we've seen that before in the past with other candidates. Once the pressure of trying to get the nomination is off, it's almost like they're a different person because they start acting like themselves instead of like who their team is telling them they have to be. And I agree with that. I had that same exact thought watching it. I was like, where was this DeSantis during the campaign? Yeah,
exactly. I mean, it was so clear, and I agree with you, Dave, that it's like his personality just did a 180 on you. And he wasn't the same guy. If he'd have just been who he is and been the person he was on the campaign trail to get him elected in Florida, I think perhaps he would have fared better in the presidential race. But he was fantastic. I thought the biggest takeaway clearly was that all of these people who just a short while ago were opponents, were foes of the former president, are now in his camp. Full-throated endorsements. I can also tell you I did turn around and paid attention to Mr. Trump's face and his body English and facial expressions, while Rubio and Vivek and Nikki, who probably, because she stayed in longer, was the most hostile to him. And I got to tell you, when she was speaking, his body English, normally he's really good about putting his shoulders back, wants to stand tall and above. And I love it, and projected. He's in charge. And in this case, he was almost kind of humble, I guess is a good way to put it, and honored that, this former opponent just a few short months ago was singing his praises and saying, we got to elect this guy the best of the country in the world.
Well, and talking about Trump's reaction to things, and of course we at home don't have a live camera on him the entire time, but it looked to me like the line he enjoyed the most was, to me, the line of the night from DeSantis about we cannot take another 4 years of a weekend at Bernie's presidency.
It was fantastic. And didn't he deliver that so well? And Dave, isn't that an example of what we were just discussing? Where was that on the campaign trail? That sort of delivery, those sort of really well-conceived one-liners. We just didn't get that. We got almost a robotic candidate that was so predictable and just didn't appeal. But last night, I agree, he did fantastic. Laura Trump, of course, closed the event. Her speech was, I think, the best she's given. I saw her speak when she came to Mississippi for the statewide convention. And honestly, I felt like it was okay. But last night, I think it was great, her telling the story of having to shield her kids from the television while their grandfather had an attempt on his life. I mean, that really had to resonate with everybody, right? Every mother who's got grandparents in their life would do the same, a self-respecting way. It doesn't matter what party you're in. That has to have an impact on you. You have to have some sort of emotional response. And I thought she summed it up very well. You know, she said they've tried to impeach him, they've tried to incarcerate him, and they tried to assassinate him. And he's the most resilient person I know. He's still standing tall and moving forward and still wants to work for this country, though he could go play golf all day.
That's exactly right. Now, we got a couple of minutes left before the break. What are we looking at tonight? What should we be watching out for in tonight's speeches, do you think?
Well, I think the highlight of the night is going to be the vice presidential candidate, J.D. Vance. Most people probably don't know a great deal about him, except maybe from, of course, his book, Hillbilly Elegy, and the movie. But from a political perspective, Dave, I'm not sure that folks pay a whole lot of attention to him. He's only been in elected office, a year and a half as a U.S. Senator from the great state of Ohio. So I think what we're going to see is him sort of take the red meat, fiery delivery that we get from Mr. Trump. I think he's going to kind of encompass that in policy terms. He's a policy wonk. He's very articulate, very bright. So I think that's what we're going to see, and just more promoting the narrative of unity, and again staying with the theme of economic prosperity and safety and strength.
Yeah, I think you're probably exactly right, and I also think that it's exactly what the party and America needs right now.
Agree. I mean, as a business person, selfishly, I guess I'll have to say, I don't know if it's selfish, but it's biased. I like to see two business guys at the top of the ticket. I'm just pumped about that.
Well, I had no idea you had any predilection towards business people. No, it is a good, strong ticket, and it's the whole message, the overarching message of unity, the exact right message, the exact right tone at the exact right time. Which you get to say those kind of things when you're talking about former President Trump. That's kind of how he tends to roll.
Yep, totally agree. Meanwhile, the Democrats are trying to figure out who's going to be their nominee.
Yeah. Well, the way I look at it is this: the Republicans are currently playing a game of let's make America first. The Democrats are currently running through their rendition of who's on first.
That's excellent. Yeah.
And,
totally agree.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not nearly as humorous as when Abbott and Costello came up with it, but we're stuck with it for the moment, so we'll just have to play it through and see who we've got in the outfield. Gerard,
love it.
You go have a wonderful time. Enjoy yourself. I'm pretty sure CNN's waiting on you for that interview.
I appreciate it. Good talking to y'all.
Good talking to you. You stay safe up there, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Sounds good. See you.
Gerard Gibert up in Milwaukee for the Republican National Convention, and I sincerely meant that when I told him he's got to be having the time of his life. That is, I'm sorry, when you have your nominee for president sitting on the stage with a bandage on his head from the assassination attempt on Saturday, That's a historic convention. This is one that they'll remember forever. This isn't just another year. You know, this is